What's going on, guys? Joseph Mills here with AutoMeter Garage, out on our road trip just outside of Detroit, Michigan. Folks, we're at the Exedy factory today, and we are about to tear into Project Evo and put a new clutch in this beast. Turns out, when you add about 200 horsepower to a car, the stock clutch doesn't like that a lot. Thankfully, these guys came through with an awesome twin disc clutch system. We're going to show you a little bit more on that later. So we're set to get tearing into this. I got a little help today. This is Steve from Exedy, a certified master technician, race car driver, race team engineer, and all-around clutch genius, which it's awesome to have a little help on this one. We began, as we normally do, removing the 8 million panels off the bottom of the car. Worth noting, the Michigan roads have already taken their toll on poor Project Evo here, but we were like, the brake kind of looks like a husky dog, which we thought was interesting. So this is down 39 clips. We've done this in previous episodes, so we're gonna start taking the car apart. So Steve's got the transmission fluid draining out of the vehicle. I'm gonna go ahead and remove the wheels. So we remove some cross members down here, and we're going to start draining out the transfer case. I'm interested to see how this looks. That looks like it's got about 25,000 miles on it, that's for sure.
Nice and dark. Got some gunk on the plug.
So,
yummy.
What we're saying here is the 30K recommended service interval might be a little excessive. Maybe you want to change this fluid a little quicker. Next step, we're pulling down the downpipe. If you guys remember, that's a 14 mil from the turbo video. Helpful to have a nice long extension and a swivel socket. So axle nuts are a 32 mil, and those pop right off. So the front sway bar end links have been disconnected. We got to do that so when we move the control arm and everything, they're not fighting each other. So two nuts come right out, and then we're going to try and remove the control arm from the hub at the bottom. We'll see if the PB blaster does its job. All right, got a pry bar here to separate the ball joint. At the lower control arm separated from the knuckle right there. Pull that up out of the way, and there is drive axle. And there's one drive axle. There we go. So now we drop this little cross member piece. It's a 12 and a 14 millimeter on here. I thought this was kind of cool. I'm going to show that to the camera. It says Evo right there, just in case you forgot while you were working on it. So like so many times, we're gonna remove all of our intake from the vehicle, so we've got room there. This is just that 10 mil right there, 8 mil. The hose clamp, which is conveniently the exact size that it needs to be. So with the intake out, we're starting to remove this power distribution center right there. We went ahead and let the nut on top of there. Unplug all these wiring harnesses here, and we're going to remove the plug from the computer, as we need to get all of this clear before we can drop the transmission. So a couple 10s, couple 12s later, and the factory ECU is out of the vehicle. Worth noting, we of course disconnected our Optima red top battery before beginning any of this. So this bracket right here was behind the intake. You can see kind of where one of the factory boost solenoids was. This basically holds every wire in this part of the vehicle, and kind of a complex, weird shaped thing. This is about 10 minutes of bolts to get this off. Not gonna lie to you, we've seen better designs on other vehicles before. We're continuing to pull everything out. We've got our turbo inlet tube, left all the zip ties on there. We've moved all this out of the way. Actually took our boost control solenoid and just zip tied this up out of the way. We stuffed a nice clean towel in the turbo inlet. That should keep us safe while we're working around. Always, always, always remember when you do stuff something in the turbo inlet to take it out before you start the vehicle. Okay, we've disconnected all of the sensors off of the transmission down here, and we've got these little clips. You can see right there, that's what holds the shift cables onto the trans. Little washer comes off, and there's one of the cables. So we took a few 12 millimeter bolts off of the shift bracket right down here, and we were able to pull that free of the transmission. You can see it inside here. So a couple 12 millimeters, and you can see the whole slave cylinder comes free right there. Next step, remove the water pump pulley from the engine. We got to kind of lower the engine down to get everything free. This gets in the way. So real simple, couple 10 millimeter bolts on here. The pro tip pulling these off is loosen those 10 millimeter bolts before you remove the belt. Going to make it way easier for you. So now we pull the drive shaft down, a couple 12s, couple 14s. Very, very important. You want to make sure that you mark exactly how this comes off, so we've got everything indexed so it balances properly and whatnot. So once that's marked, that comes down. We got a couple more brackets here, and we should be able to pull the main drive shaft out. Back by him. Our many piece drive shaft is free from the vehicle. We should probably move this over the way.
So what I want to show is how to remove the pull type bearing. This is a very messed up part that we see a lot when people are removing these clutches from the Evolution here. So I'm going to first show you how it works. There's this retaining groove here for the snap clip that's in here. So when this is pushed in, it clicks in, and then the springs keep the tension on it, and this keeps the bearing from coming loose. So when it's in the vehicle, you want to remove it. The way to remove this is that you take a flathead screwdriver, you're going to stick it between the bearing and the bearing cage. You don't want to stick it down here because this will come apart, and if you do damage this part, this retaining, the retaining head of the pressure plate here, you damage it and you're going to have to buy a whole new pressure plate assembly. It's very expensive. So the trick to this is in the vehicle, you're going to pull the fork towards the driver's side tire, so it's going to push the bearing towards the clutch. You stick your flathead screwdriver between the clip and the bearing, and then you twist, and the bearing's out. So I removed the inspection plug from the bottom of the transmission. So like I just showed over there, what you're going to do is we're going to take this clutch fork up here, we're going to pull it towards the driver's side, which is going to push the bearing towards the pressure plate, which is going to expose the snap ring on the back side of the head plate. And we're going to stick the screwdriver in here.
All right, so right here, I'm actually rotating the crankshaft, and the reason for that is when we're trying to get that bearing out, it starts to kind of cock a little bit to one direction.
The bearing retainer cage, it'll cock a little bit, so this makes it difficult for the bearing to come out. A quick, easy solution to that is just have somebody rotate the engine slowly till you get to the part that's kind of cocked out. Stick a screwdriver in there, compress it, and the bearing comes right out.
Maybe this isn't the exact right tool for the job here, but turns out slide hammer works pretty well for pulling out these stub shafts. I'm going to hold this out of the way. You want to hammer that out.
And out comes Stubby.
Beautiful.
So if you don't have the correct tool for Mitsubishi to do this, a slide hammer, but Mitsubishi makes a special adapter to do this. You can just use your regular like bearing puller, hub puller here, and an 8x125 thread bolt, and a couple washers, and just put it in one of these holes and tighten it up and give it the old whack, and it comes right out.
Now we're going to move on to get all of the motor mounts. We're on the rear mount on the vehicle right now. We have an engine support stand in place. Anytime you're pulling these off, you need to have one of these here for safety. As it turns out, this rear mount, shockingly, on this vehicle is a little difficult to get to, but thankfully with everything out of the way, we can actually access it from the top. Just about all of the transfer case bolts are out. The one in here on the top, which is going to be real tough to see, is your challenging one. So you got it, you can see it from right here, but we found a long extension in through the side is likely going to be the easiest way to get that one out. But once we got that last bolt, we should have the T-case free. Now we're going to separate the transfer case from the transmission. So with everything out of the way, our next move here is to remove this mount. Thankfully, engine's nicely supported. It'll all kind of swing a little bit, so we want to make sure that everything's secure so we don't damage the radiator in the process. So one of the cool things we found, and by cool we mean one of the Pimp My Ride features, is there's a trans mount on the trans mount. So Steve's pulling the trans mount right now, and we're starting to undo the bell housing bolts on the other side as well. So this is the part I was referring to. This is the trans mount for the trans mount, which is now finally free. So it's just a little bit tight in here. So we're going to remove this lower intercooler pipe. Real easy if you remember from the video when we did the heart pipe kit. Just got a 12 right here and then a couple 8s for the band clamps. Should come right out. All right, we've got all of our trans bolts out. Mounts are clear. We removed intercooler piping. It looks like we've got everything out of the way. It's a rather girthy trans. So the chain kind of fits in a less than ideal spot here, but it looks like she's ready to come out. All right. Let's go ahead and lower it down. After a little bit of wrestling with this bad boy, we decided to lower the subframe just a skosh, as we didn't need much extra clearance, and that made all the difference, and the trans popped free. Now we're removing the pressure plate from the vehicle. You want to make sure that when you take this off, you're doing these in a cross pattern. Right, onto the flywheel, same deal. Want to make sure we're doing these in a star pattern. We've got a little plug right here that we need to remove. Easiest way is just to grab a small socket and hammer that out. That will then allow us to get to this shaft here. Now, very, very important, pay close attention to the alignment of the springs. It only goes in one way. If you don't put them back in correctly, you're not going to have any tension on your clutch fork. And we've got this 10 millimeter right here. This is for retaining the slide on the clutch fork. And we should be able to then tap that out. So you pull one more plug out right there. We can run an extension in here and just tap this bad boy out. So next step is we've got a filthy bell housing area. We want to go through with some parts cleaner and spray all of this out. Remove all of the old clutch material. So we get it sprayed down real nice. We'll go ahead and wipe it down. Very important, the clutch fork shaft. We want to make sure that that is nice, polished up, a little emery paper on there, and we're gonna grease it up real nice. Slide her back in. So this right here, these little packets of grease are like my favorite grease. So we're going to spray a whole bunch out all over this shaft and grease it up real nice. So I got this started here. Now we're going to grease up the fork. You can see the polished sections right there. It's just really important where that contacts the throwout bearing that we got. Good amount of purple grease. Also, inside, we need to make sure that this is greased properly as well. Although I may have to have Brandon and his slender hands do this part. So, input shaft is clean, polished up. We're going to put a little more of our purple grease on that polished area as well. That looks very lubricated. We're just going to blast a little more inside of the throwout bearing. Pro tip, a little bit of blue Loctite on this. Don't need much. Just a little dab will do ya. All right, she's in. Just snug, don't need to over tighten it. So we got our boots back in place. Now we'll just tap this plug back in. Very, very gently. And we are all set to start wrestling with this thing again. Much like the inside of the bell housing, since we've got all of this off, we're just gonna spray some brake clean in here. Get all of this nastiness off. Obviously, have a drain pan on the floor, lest you make a disaster of your shop. So now we're gonna prep the clutch assembly for installation into the vehicle. We have a very nice 6mm Allen head that is gonna take care of all of the bolts on this unit.
So now we got our MM062 SDF out of the box. You have to take it apart before you install it. So it's a 6mm Allen, and you just want to work half turn or so at a time in a star pattern. This will make sure that you don't distort the diaphragm spring, causing any engagement issues down the road. All right, so you want to pay attention to this blue alignment mark. This will ensure that you have your intermediate plates and your cover aligned correctly. This is done at the factory, all the parts are balanced, and then it's assembled in a certain manner. So make sure that you pay attention to this blue mark when you're taking it apart and installing it. So we'll show you the correct orientation for the parts. So I want to show the main differences between our most common twin plate for the Evolution, which is our MMO62 SD HD and MMO22 HD SD for the Evo 8s and 9s and the Evo 10s. So on my right here I have our standard Cerametallic, and then on the left here I have our new SDF Twin Organic. The first big difference you're going to see is the pressure plate has been redesigned. This SDF is a 215 millimeter disc versus the Cerametallic, which is a 200 millimeter. As you can see, the intermediate plate is a little bit beefier. It's got a recess with the disc. This is our standard top floater plate or the pressure plate. And then the main difference here is the disc. We have our Cerametallic dampened disc, and then we have our new organic disc for the SDF twin plate clutch. As you can see, that it's slightly bigger, which means you're going to get more surface area, which means a bit more torque holding capacity. The biggest improvement is going to be the organic facing over the Cerametallic. This is going to provide a nice smooth engagement, good streetability, low noise, and should provide a good wear life. Again, both are dampened disc. The next thing you're going to notice is the intermediate plate. They appear similar, however, the one for the SDF has been redesigned. It's got a recess in it for the thicker material on the disc. Still have your lift assist springs, and so again, the lower disc, same thing as the top disc, 215 versus 200 millimeter, both sprung, and then the organic, and then the flywheels. The SDF doesn't have the flywheel ring or the recess pockets with the spring, so it's pretty straightforward on the installation. Our Cerametallic HD is rated for 615 foot-pounds of torque at the tire. Our SDF twin plate is rated for 553 foot-pounds of torque at the tire.
So now as we bolt the flywheel back up, we want to put a little red thread locker on the flywheel bolts. That's per specification. We're going to start these in by hand. Now, once these are in, we're going to first torque to 40 Newton meters all the way around before we do our final torque. So with all those torqued the first time, now we go to 110 Newton meters. Same deal, star pattern. That's a breaker bar. So with everything torqued in, one last shot of cleaner on there to make sure that surface is spotless. So now we're going to put all this together. We went ahead, brake cleaned this steel right here, and we are going to lay our disc together. Worth noting, it says TM side of disc. That means transmission side. The other side will say flywheel of disc right there. Tools in. Our last plate goes on. Again, paying attention to our blue right there. And finally, our pressure plate. And we can start threading our bolt. Now we put the pressure plate on. This is going to be 23 foot-pounds of torque, also done in a star pattern. Make sure you always get up, look straight on at that to verify everything is lined up properly. Your alignment tool should move in and out pretty freely. A little bit of wrestling necessary to get this trans into place. Guys, definitely use a trans jack when you're doing this. Do not try to muscle these. You will end up screwing up your installation. So just slow and wins the race on this one. So when you're sliding the transfer case back in, you want to make sure it's lubed up good and proper. You've really just got that one seal that's going to keep all that from leaking. You got to get them splined up. We're supporting this from multiple angles, so we've got it straight on. And then we've got some bolts thread it in. All right, so we've got all of our mounts back in the vehicle. We went ahead and put the stub shafts in. You just got to line those up. Use a little dead blow like this. That'll allow you to get them in there. Just a little bit of tap. Don't force them in. Kind of wiggle them as you go, and they will pop right in. Yeah, I want to focus and show you guys something right here. So this ball joint, when this goes in, there's a little detent. You need to make sure that that lines up with where the bolt goes through. Otherwise, one, you're never going to get the bolt back out, and two, you'll never probably even get the bolt in. So be careful right there. We're going to slide that into place. And once we get everything lined up and properly lubricated, we're just going to give her a little tap with a hammer. And we can thread the bolt in. It is worth noting that that bolt is going to be torqued to 52 foot-pounds. So it's a 32 millimeter bolt on the end of the CV axles. This is torqued to 184 foot-pounds. And it's, oh, you want to hold the brake there? And it's a little bit of a workout. But you definitely do not want that coming loose. So 184 foot-pounds. All right, so the car for the most part is back together. We've left the top of the engine compartment open because one of the things we highly recommend doing anytime you're adding any more clamping force or to the clutch system on one of these Evo 10s is to replace the clutch master cylinder. So we got this cool little unit right here from the good folks at AMS. This is an adapter that goes on our firewall, and what it does is it allows us to use essentially the Evo 9 clutch master cylinder, which is a nice metal piece right here. The stock clutch master on these Evo 10s is a cheap plastic piece. They've recalled it before, but really they fail under stock clamping loads, and once you put a high performance clutch like our Exedy twin disc in there, you're very likely to see failures. Also comes with this nice braided stainless line kit here. That's going to keep that the soft part of the line from ballooning out and distorting under pressure. Give us just a lot better engagement. So this is a pretty easy install. We're going to start by removing the factory brake master cylinder and brake booster, which will allow us to access the clutch master. So we got our brake master cylinder out, real simple. Two 12 millimeter nuts on there, two 12 millimeters on the lines. Disconnect the fluid sensor, and then we got to remove one clip to pull the rubber hose off. As you can see, we've got it stuffed full of pig mats and towels and everything in there. Brake fluid is nasty stuff. And as if our Evo didn't have enough problems with the finishes on it, we don't need to add brake fluid to the paint as well. So we've got our brake booster out. At the base of the brake pedal inside the vehicle, you'll see four 12 millimeter bolts. Gonna go ahead and pull those out, get rid of the clip that secures this in, as well as the clutch master clip while you're down there. And then basically you contort a little bit. It's a tight fit. You're gonna have to bend those brake lines out of the way. Just be real gentle with it and kind of slow and steady inch it out. It does come out, but it's definitely not the easiest brake booster that I've removed before. So once we've got this free and clear, we are going to go inside back here, and there are four little studs. We're going to cut two of those off, and that's going to give us a spot to mount our new clutch master cylinder. Right here is where the clutch master clips on to the clutch pedal. Get underneath, just kind of pry that off. Once it's out, literally, if you're facing the car like this, turn it counterclockwise about a quarter turn, and it slides right out. You can see this is the partially hard, partially pliable line that goes to the clutch slave cylinder. And if you look at this master, you can see just, it's a cheap plastic piece that weighs a couple of ounces. So you can see why it's worth replacing that, especially if you're going to upgrade the clutch. Again, these things fail stock, so.
Okay, here we have the slave cylinder and hydraulic line out of the Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution 10. What I'm going to go over is removing the restrictor pill that is inside of the slave cylinder. The restrictor pill acts as a delay valve for the slave cylinder, so you cannot dump the clutch or let it out quickly. It will delay the fluid travel back to the master cylinder and cause an automatic slip feeling. This is done by the OEM companies to make sure that there's no transmission damage if you do launch the car. It'll basically destroy the clutch before it destroys the transmission, and that is because a clutch is a wear item and it will not be covered under warranty like a transmission will be. So this is their little way of making sure that you cannot aggressively drive the car. But if you have the slave cylinder and the hydraulic line, simply undo the hydraulic line from the slave cylinder. And inside of here you can see that there's a very restricted pill that goes inside. And with some finesse, it'll pop out, and is basically a little plastic piece with a spring attached to it with a very small fluid orifice that delays the fluid travel. All you have to do is remove this one piece and then reconnect your slave cylinder to your hydraulic line. Make sure that you use new copper or aluminum washers for these to make sure that you have a good hydraulic seal and no leaking, and that will allow your clutch to operate as it should. So when you let the clutch out quick, it's going to do its thing and not cause it to automatically slip, which will result in a better clutch life and better performance, you know, throughout your vehicle's driving experience. Okay, so now that you have your restrictor pill removed from your slave cylinder, the next issue that you might have on a Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution, whether it's a 8, 9, or 10 in North America, is the fact that it is a pull type clutch, and when you have the restrictor in there, it will delay the fluid travel back, so it will never allow the fork to come back very hard. Now that we've put in a performance product and we've removed the slave cylinder, the diaphragm spring is much heavier than stock, as well as we have unrestricted travel back and forth from the master cylinder to slave cylinder. So if you let the clutch out very, very fast and drive very aggressive, the pull type clutch, when you pull this out, the Belleville spring will invert, and then when you let it out fast, since there's no fluid control with the restrictor pill, it can allow the clip, the force of the bearing and the diaphragm and everything to slingshot back, and it can expose the clip on the back side, which can then grab and pull it off the next time you press the clutch. So what the clutch fork stop does is it attaches to the top of your slave cylinder mounts, and when you have it adjusted, you know, normally the slave cylinder is pushed in and then it's going to actuate out to pull the clutch. So what that does is if you let the clutch out fast, it's only going to let the fork come back to a set point, so it can never expose the bearing clip inside of there, because it will not be able to compress past that. So you do have to adjust this periodically as your clutch wears. So we recommend to just check it every oil change to make sure that you want to have about a 20 thousandths gap in between this and your fork, just so you're not preloading and you're not too far away to allow the bearing clip to be exposed.
So you can see the studs we're going to be grinding away right there. It's going to be the top left and the bottom right. Alrighty, so these are our two studs that we ground away. Those just fell on the carpet inside. And as you'll see, the nuts that were already on there are a perfect fit for the studs on our new clutch master cylinder. Now, as we did some grinding on the vehicle and removed the paint on there, we're gonna just put a little clear spray paint on there to seal that up and to prevent any corrosion from starting. Now we're going through bleeding the brakes and bleeding the clutch.
Okay, pump.
Alrighty, we got her back together. Gonna start the vehicle up. Everything's been bled. Wheels are torqued. We're gonna go for a quick drive, come back, check the fluids. But we wanted to point out to you, when you've got a twin disc or triple plate, a multi-disc clutch system, they're gonna make more noise than a stock clutch. Listen to this here. That sound right there, totally normal. Now this system is significantly quieter than a lot of the ones I've heard, but that little kind of grindy, scrapey sound you hear with RPMs there, totally normal. Nothing to worry about at all, and it's just a sound that, it's the sound of performance is what it is. All right, guys, there we go. New Exedy twin disc organic clutch system installed in Project Evo, and I gotta tell you, it feels absolutely spectacular. Pedal effort is basically stock. The engagement is so smooth, very streetable, and obviously we've picked up just a ton of holding power on this vehicle. So this is really gonna set us up for some fun driving to come. Big thanks to the guys at Exedy for having us out at their spectacular shop out here just outside of Detroit. Now, we got a long drive back to Sycamore, Illinois, so we're gonna pack up and head back to the shop. Thank you, as always, for watching. I'm Joseph Mills with AutoMeter.